One of the darkest and most unsettling moments in a trial that had already begun, surrounded by scandals and long-guarded secrets. What seemed like just another day in court quickly turned into a scene of unbearable tension. The kind of tension that makes an entire room hold its breath, and at the center of this storm was him, Diddy, the man whose public image of control and confidence started to crumble before everyone's eyes. And the spark, a name no one expected to hear in that courtroom, Justin Bieber. Whispers behind the scenes had always murmured about secret gatherings, bizarre parties, and strange rituals organized by Diddy. Events he himself referred to as fray-offs. These sessions, cloaked in extravagance and mystery, were reportedly orchestrated by him in precise detail and captured on electronic devices. Some of these gatherings, according to testimony, lasted for days, days in which reality warped and normal rules no longer applied. But all of that was still being discussed with the emotional detachment of legal proceedings, until Justin's name echoed through the courtroom walls. The reaction was immediate. Diddy's composed expression shattered like glass under pressure. His hands clenched into fists, his jaw locked, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The air grew dense. For the first time, the empire of silence and control around him began to crack. What no one anticipated was that Justin Bieber had broken his silence and publicly voiced his support for Cassie. The news stunned everyone except Diddy, who had already seen the post on his phone before the session began. The emotional impact was so intense that security had to step in. What happened next was so serious, even the judge appeared, visibly shocked. "Do you think your past self was headed straight for self-destruction?" The question, asked in an old interview with Justin, now echoed with new weight. "Definitely, 100%. I'm not sure I'd still be alive today. It was dark, really dark. I'm just grateful I saw other examples, people with faith, with families, with values, people who showed me a path I could follow." Words that once sounded like a story of redemption now wove into a far more disturbing narrative. Because the boy who had seemed lost at the height of his fame had, as a teenager, been placed under the care of a man now accused of the most sinister motives. And that's when everything began to connect in a terrifying way. Recall a moment, caught on camera, that now gives chills to anyone watching. Diddy, wearing that cryptic smile, says in an interview, "We're living the best moments. What we're doing together. Well, that's something I can't share, but it's every 15-year-old boy's dream. At the time, it might have sounded like exaggerated marketing. Today, it feels like a glaring red flag. He's under my care for 48 hours, Diddy once stated, as if describing a casual arrangement. The issue is that everyone already knew who they were dealing with. According to records and accounts, Diddy had exerted a similar kind of influence over him. And now the accusations repeat, only with a different name. Justin Bieber. The pressing question, who allowed a still-developing teenager to be handed over to someone already surrounded by such disturbing whispers? On the second day of trial, something in the air felt different. The courtroom was quieter than usual. There was a strange, almost forced calm. Diddy entered flanked by his high-priced lawyers, wearing confidence like armor. But a simple glance into his eyes revealed something was off. He kept scanning the room, as if expecting someone to leap from the shadows. Security had been increased. A guard stood directly behind his chair. Another was stationed at the side of the aisle. It was as if they'd received a warning. Something was about to go down. Cassie arrived minutes later, and the contrast was striking. She wore a plain black dress with a white collar, modest, elegant, yet powerful. She didn't need hired protection. She was surrounded by friends who formed a human shield around her. While Diddy had paid bodyguards, she had genuine support. But what truly betrayed the mogul's inner panic was his behavior. Diddy wouldn't let go of his phone. He stared at the screen with unblinking eyes, compulsively scrolling downward. With each new update, his face grew darker. At the height of tension, his own attorney had to yank the device from his hands. That's when something disturbing was noticed. Diddy's hand was shaking. The prosecution, on the other hand, seemed to know something. The prosecutors exchanged glances, whispered behind folders, showed images on a tablet with expressions of someone who had just completed the final pieces of a dangerous puzzle. One of Diddy's lawyers tried to maintain his client's composure, whispering advice in his ear, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. But Diddy didn't want comfort. He rejected every attempt to be guided. In one tense push, he nearly knocked the attorney over the table. The judge entered, and her expression said everything. On the first day, she had been composed. Now, she looked like someone who had received grave information. Her eyes went straight to Diddy's table. She whispered something to the clerk, who immediately grabbed a phone and left the room discreetly. What no one in the room knew was that minutes before, Diddy had read a post by Justin Bieber, a clear message of support for Cassie. The reaction was immediate. He lost control. They tried to hide his phone, but it was too late. The truth had been read, and his rage began to grow, like a fire no one could extinguish. The bailiff ordered everyone to rise. The jurors looked at each other. In confusion, the atmosphere was suffocating. One juror asked for water, her hands visibly trembling. Diddy, for his part, couldn't stop shaking his leg. A vein throbbed in his forehead. His lawyer tried to distract him with paperwork, but Diddy shoved it aside, never breaking his gaze. From the void ahead, it was like watching someone on the edge of a breakdown. The only question left was when it would happen, and what he'd do when he completely lost control. The second hand on the clock barely moved, but its ticking was unbearably loud. Each second felt like it weighed a ton. The anticipation was stifling. Everyone in that courtroom knew what was about to unfold, and no one could truly prepare for it. The empire Diddy had built over decades, with a flawless image, was about to collapse, and not just because of legal charges, but because of something far more personal. The betrayal of someone he once saw as a brother. Justin Bieber had broken the silence. In an old video, with a trembling voice and teary eyes, Bieber spoke, "I just wanted to protect her. I didn't want her to go through what I went through. No one deserves that. No one." It was impossible not to feel the weight of those words now. Back then, they sounded like the emotional outbursts of a drained young man. Today, they rang as a confession. "Think about it," he asked. "You put a child in a room full of candy and say you'll be back in 2 days. What do you think will happen?" A metaphor that once sounded innocent now carried a haunting undertone. Meanwhile, away from the cameras, behind the courtroom doors, another legal earthquake was forming. Diddy's co-defendant in a civil lawsuit, another equally powerful figure in the music industry, decided to go on the offensive. The plaintiff's attorney was being targeted. Yes, we're talking about Sean Carter, Jay-Z. He demanded that the lawyer, Tony Busby, be penalized for allegedly failing in his duties. But the truth was, the situation was far more serious than these legal maneuvers suggested. A woman identified only as Jane D had accused both artists of sexual assault after an MTV party in the year 2000. While attorneys clashed with procedural arguments inside the courtroom, something far more explosive was unfolding online. Justin Bieber, the boy who grew up in the spotlight under Diddy's wing, published a post that shook the music world and the courtroom itself. It was lightning on a clear day. No one expected it. Right in the middle of the trial, Bieber shared a blunt, unfiltered message. This wasn't another generic post about strength and positivity that celebrities often share. It was a detailed, devastating personal testimony. He described industry parties he had attended as a teenager, events where, according to him, he witnessed deeply disturbing behavior from Diddy. He specifically recalled one moment when he saw Diddy aggressively grab Cassie's arm during a 2015 after-party. He described how Diddy cut her off constantly, as if she didn't even have the right to speak. These weren't rumors. These were memories, publicly shared by someone with over 270 million followers. The impact was immediate. During the first recess, the courthouse hallways turned into rumor central. Groups huddled together, eyes locked on phones, showing each other the post as if witnessing the beginning of history. A court officer had to intervene. "Turn off your phones before you return," he said firmly. But it was no use. Legal aides were printing screenshots in a rush. Even jurors seemed restless, aware that something monumental was happening. In the post, Bieber attached an old photo. He and Cassie together at an industry event. Both smiled, but if you looked into her eyes, there was something there, something no one noticed back then. The caption was short but sharp. "I've always respected Cassie's strength. I deeply regret not speaking up sooner." Inside the courtroom, chaos took hold. Diddy's lawyer was the first to see the post. He tried to hide his phone, lowered the screen, and muttered orders to get all devices off the table. But it was too late. An assistant had already shown Diddy the screen. His gaze froze, pupils dilated, jaw clenched. He looked like someone who'd just taken a blow to the gut. Witnesses nearby swore they saw the transformation happen in real time. His face drained of color, his fingers trembled. The whole courtroom sensed it. The downfall wasn't beginning with a verdict, it was starting with a post, and to make it even crueler, the world knew exactly what that betrayal meant. Diddy had always presented himself as Justin's mentor, had publicly claimed to help shape the boy's career, calling himself a big brother, and now that same boy was telling the whole world, "I saw. I stayed silent, but I won't stay silent anymore." Diddy wasn't just facing the justice system. He was facing the harshest trial of all, the one where truth arrives too late, and as he sank into his own disbelief, Justin ended his public testimony with a line that cut deeper than any formal charge. "Today I understand what used to seem unclear. The patterns of control, the fear, the manipulation, they were there all along, and I missed it." The courtroom sat frozen, nearly in a trance, when the unexpected happened. There he was, Justin Bieber, vulnerable, emotional, in an old video that now took on new meaning. His voice cracked between choked phrases. "I felt completely lost. Everyone said they loved me, but one slip, and they'd turn their backs. I was just a kid, and so was she." He tried to hold back tears while speaking about Cassie. "I wanted to protect her, but you can't force a connection. It has to be real, right? So I let her live her life, but if she ever needs me, I'll be here." It was moving, but also unsettling, because deep down, the question no one dared say aloud was, protect her from what? Or worse, from whom? In the courtroom, the air turned heavy as lead. When Diddy saw Bieber's post, he didn't need to speak. His face said it all. First came the shock, wide eyes, jaw slightly open. Then came the fury, eyebrows furrowed like a storm on the horizon, nostrils flared, jaw so tight it looked like his teeth might crack. A woman sitting 3 rows back later told reporters he was trembling. His hands were shaking like he'd been electrocuted. His lawyer handed him a stack of papers. Diddy reached for them and failed. They slipped from his shaking hands and scattered on the floor. Everyone noticed, and then he stood up. Not calmly, but abruptly, aggressively, almost threateningly. The courthouse guard, who had been watching Diddy closely since early on, stepped forward. He'd seen that look before. He knew what was coming. That's when Diddy muttered loud enough for the front row to hear, "After everything I did for that kid, loyalty doesn't mean anything anymore." He added something about consequences that made his own lawyer grab his arm and yank him back into his seat urgently. The tension was palpable. Diddy's face no longer masked anything. It was the portrait of repressed rage, raw frustration, wounded ego. A sketch made by a courtroom artist later went viral. Bulging eyes, a vein popping in his neck, clenched jaw. The artist remarked, "In 12 years of covering trials, I've never seen a stare like that." The prosecutor noticed it all. She subtly motioned to her assistant, who left through a side door. Later, we would learn why. They decided to move up a witness, someone who would corroborate Bieber's post. Meanwhile, the guards exchanged silent looks. Two of them subtly approached Diddy's table. One of them discreetly unlocked something on his belt. He didn't draw anything, but he was ready. Diddy, once polished, had transformed completely. At the start of the day, he was the image of composure, seated upright, taking notes, exuding confidence. Now he looked like a cornered man. He kept wiping his face, adjusting his tie like it was strangling. Him! And then came the spark. He slammed his hand on the table hard. A water glass tipped over, shattering on the floor. Some gasped at the noise. Others held their breath, Diddy muttered. But reporters nearby heard every word. "He'll never work in this town again. Neither of them will." His lawyer tried to calm him, placing a hand on his shoulder, but it was like trying to stop a volcano from erupting. The judge slammed her gavel. 15-minute recess, but the break was a poisoned gift. Instead of easing tensions, it gave the fury time to boil, and what came next marked the emotional turning point of the trial. Cassie returned to the courtroom a changed woman. At the first hearing, she could barely look up from the floor. Now she walked in with her shoulders back, spine straight, eyes locked on the jurors. She didn't look at Diddy with fear, but with victory. Her testimony began like dynamite. Unseen text messages between her and Diddy were presented. The content made people gasp aloud. In a string of 17 messages from 2016, Diddy demanded to know why Cassie hadn't answered his calls. In another, he insisted, "I need to know where you are every minute. That's the deal if you want your career." The courtroom fell silent. You could hear the ceiling fans spinning. Cassie revealed he even dictated who she could speak to in the industry. He had a list of men I wasn't allowed to talk to unless he was present. And when Justin Bieber's name came up, silence turned into a chill. When I asked about him, he banned me from speaking to Justin. He just said, "Don't question me." And when I insisted, he grabbed my arm in front of everyone and whispered that I'd regret it. Cassie's voice didn't waver. She spoke with clarity, with no fear. Each sentence hit like a hammer, and every detail matched what Bieber had posted just hours earlier. Surveillance, control, threats. And when the prosecutor finally asked her why she had never spoken before, Cassie took a deep breath, looked directly into the eyes of the jury, and answered, "Because I thought no one would believe me. But now I know I'm not alone anymore. He told me no one would believe me, that he decided who worked in this industry and who would never work again." Her words echoed through the room like a bolt of lightning slicing through the dark. 2. Jurors reacted instantly. A woman quietly wiped away tears, while an older man in the front row scribbled something furiously in his notebook, underlining it 3 times. The breaking point came soon after. The courtroom screen lit up. Surveillance footage from a hotel dated 2018 began to play. The video showed Cassie trying to talk to another artist in the lobby. Then Diddy appeared. He slowly approached, put his arm over her shoulder, and pulled her away with a forced smile. The body language said more than any testimony, and it aligned perfectly with what Cassie had just described. Diddy immediately leaned toward his lawyer, whispering something urgent. His eyes locked on the screen, hands shaking. Cassie continued with almost surgical precision. She didn't just recount incidents. She listed them with dates, locations, and who else had been present. March 8, 2017, at the Standard Hotel in New York. June 22nd of that same year at his mansion in Miami. September 12th, 2018, backstage at the VMAs. With each detail, Diddy's lawyer frantically flipped through papers, as if searching for a hole to hide in. She revealed that other witnesses, previously too afraid to speak, were now coming forward, encouraged by Justin Bieber's public support. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing with people telling me they're ready to share what they saw, she said. But what came next shattered Diddy's image like a wall of glass. Cassie recounted that, after a brief conversation with Bieber at an industry party, Diddy had pulled her aside and whispered, "Even Justin knows what happens to people who go against me." Now, with Bieber publicly on her side, that threat carried a chilling weight. Diddy, once proud and upright, seemed to be crumbling visibly. Every new detail that tied him to the Canadian singer made him more agitated. He whispered frantically to his defense team, his eyes darting, as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. Days after the initial complaint, Cassie's lawyer Busby updated the case to include another major name, Jay-Z. The defense team demanded copies of the videos shown in court. Having direct access to the digital files would allow for a stronger preparation, free from reliance on government offices. Still, Judge Subramania denied the request, but left the door open for possible reconsideration in the future. The court debated the limits of what could or could not be shared with the defense. The prosecution offered alternative means for viewing, handling, and analyzing the footage, all within legal boundaries. This cold, strategic legal battle stood in brutal contrast to the emotional intensity unfolding outside the cameras. Then came an intimate moment, nearly silent, but devastating in impact. A hesitant young voice spoke. "It was hard. I was young. I didn't know who to trust. Everyone said they loved me, but they turned their backs at the first mistake." It was Bieber in an old resurfaced interview, explaining why he chose to support her. "If she ever needs me, I'm here. I just want to protect her, because no one deserves to go through what I went through. No one." And then, as if the tension couldn't escalate any further, the prosecution played its most powerful card. The lead prosecutor walked slowly to the center of the courtroom holding a folder. "Your Honor, we would like to present evidence that directly contradicts Mr. Combs's claim that Ventura fabricated these accusations recently." She connected her tablet to the courtroom's audiovisual system. All the screens turned on at once, revealing a series of messages exchanged between Cassie and Justin Bieber in 2017. The courtroom held its breath. One of Cassie's messages read, "I don't know what to do anymore. He monitors everything. And if I talk to anyone, he'll make sure I never work again." Bieber's reply was immediate and clear. "This isn't normal, Kay. What he's doing to you isn't right. You need to talk to someone who can help." The instant those messages appeared, Diddy exploded. He stood up abruptly. His chair scraped loudly, slicing through the silence like thunder. His face flushed red, eyes wide open. He shouted, "This is all lies!" He pointed at Cassie, furious. "You know damn well it wasn't like that. After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me?" His lawyer tried to calm him, pulling on his arm. "Sean, don't do this," he whispered. But Diddy shoved him so hard the man nearly fell backward. "You're both making all this up," he screamed, his voice booming through the courtroom. The judge banged her gavel forcefully, trying to regain control. "Mr. Combs, sit down now, or you will be removed from this courtroom." But it was too late. Two guards were already in motion. One stepped between him and Cassie. The other positioned himself behind. Court reporters tried to type every word of the meltdown. Jurors sat frozen, not blinking. A woman at the back of the room covered her mouth, unable to hide the shock of what she had just witnessed, and at that moment it became clear to everyone. The mask had fallen. The air in the courtroom shifted, suddenly heavy and almost touchable. A younger man in the front row slowly leaned away from Diddy, as if instinctively needing distance from that eruption of rage. "Your Honor, we need a recess," Diddy's lawyer shouted, trying to regain control of the situation as it slipped. Further away, but Diddy wasn't listening. He turned toward the screen where the messages appeared, pointing furiously. "This is all fake. These messages were forged." His voice echoed through the walls, desperate and furious. His gestures were wild, uncontrolled, each word like thunder trying to convince everyone it was a trap. Justin never said any of this. The impact of that digital evidence was catastrophic for his defense. 5-year-old messages completely dismantled his version of events. Cassie hadn't invented everything for fame or money. She had confided in Bieber about the same abusive patterns long before any legal process had begun. The judge, now visibly impatient, slammed her gavel once more. "Remove the jury immediately," she ordered sternly. The 12 jurors exited the room, but most couldn't take their eyes off the main stage. Diddy, still standing, was now surrounded by 2 guards. One placed a firm hand on the mogul's shoulder, trying to calm him down. For a moment, it looked like Diddy might react violently, but the fury dissolved. The sound of heavy breathing and the vacant stare revealed the harsh awareness of the damage he had just done. His empire, carefully built over decades, was collapsing in front of everyone. And as the officers kept their eyes on him, the public saw for the first time a vulnerable Diddy. A man whose carefully crafted public image was being dismantled by Cassie's words. With the jury gone, Judge Marlowe didn't hold back. She stood, pointing straight at Diddy like a judge of iron. "Mr. Combs, this is not a recording studio. This is a court of law. You are not in charge here." Her voice sliced through the air like a sharp blade, demanding order and respect. "One more outburst like this, and I will hold you in contempt. You will spend the remainder of the trial in the holding cell, appearing only when absolutely necessary." And she didn't stop there. She demanded a psychiatric evaluation. Before the next session, the judge ordered enhanced security measures. 2 officers would remain within steps of him at all times. The defense's situation was dire. The lawyers huddled in a corner looking defeated, like a football team suffering a humiliating loss. The lead attorney shook his head silently, while another made frantic phone calls, and a third scribbled non-stop, casting anxious glances at Diddy, a silent warning that everything was falling apart. When the jury returned, their expressions gave away the damage. A middle-aged woman subtly shifted her chair away from the defense table. The man, who had been diligently taking notes, now sat with arms crossed, not writing a word. And juror number 8, a young professional who had smiled at Diddy on the first day, now didn't even glance in his direction. The prosecution remained perfectly composed, but you could sense their quiet satisfaction. The lead prosecutor calmly organized her files, exchanging subtle glances with Diddy, glances heavy with an imminent win. Her assistant even had to hide a faint smile behind her hand. Security stayed rigid for the rest of the day. 2 officers stood behind Diddy's chair, showing no sign of relaxation. Another guarded the door, hand near his holster. The message was loud and clear. No misstep would be tolerated. Among the spectators, legal experts didn't hide their enthusiasm. A former federal prosecutor whispered to a colleague, "He just lost this case." Law professors jotted notes feverishly. A defense lawyer from another high-profile trial shook his head in disdain. Too amateur. And in the middle of this storm, Cassie remained still, almost like a statue. Perfect posture, hands folded in her lap, calm expression. When Diddy lost control, she didn't flinch. She showed no fear. She denied him the satisfaction of a reaction. The contrast was stark, her absolute poise versus his complete collapse. By the end of day 2, the shift was impossible to ignore. Diddy entered with confidence, wearing a designer suit and flashing an easy smile, as if he owned the room. He left with his head down, tie loosened, surrounded by lawyers who looked like they'd aged 10 years in a few hours. His eyes stayed glued to the floor, avoiding the press in the hallway. The most revealing moment, his lead attorney tried to place a hand on his back to guide him out. Diddy shrugged it off, not out of arrogance, but out of defeat. What we witnessed in that courtroom went far beyond evidence. It was a battle of character. Cassie, steady and composed. Diddy, shattered by pressure. When Justin Bieber chose to stand by her, the true faces emerged beneath the weight of judgment. The truth wasn't just in documents, it was in human reactions. That instant when Diddy lost control and threatened. People in plain view likely sealed the case's fate, regardless of what might surface later. The question now is, who else will have the courage to break the silence? Justin Bieber broke the industry's unspoken rule to protect each other. Now that this door has been flung open, other stars might be ready to speak up, ready to expose, and all of it only adds to the suspense. Who will be next to step forward? And if you appreciated this video, check out what Cassie revealed about Diddy's parties. Thank you for watching. God bless, and we'll see you again soon.